We're really hitting our stride here, folks. For our 8th session, please join me in welcoming our distinguished panelists, Marcus Cern, Naveen Rao, May Habib, and Tanya Dua, for an insightful discussion titled Driving Enterprise Value with AI, What You Need to Know. They'll explore the ways in which AI can drive enterprise, automation, and unlock unprecedented value.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you've had some very engaging, exciting panels so far. I know there's us and maybe 2 or 3 more keeping you from happy hour, so I will try to make it as fast as possible. Unfortunately, May could not make it today, but we have Alex.
Thank you. You know, I just want to give context about how this happened, because Inside Partners put all the information about May into an AI engine, an amazing woman, entrepreneur, AI leader, and then they spit out my name to replace her, which is amazing. So I'm Alex Satzberger. I'm the CEO of a company called Optimizely, and we just formed also a partnership with Ryder. So it was a good opportunity to come here on stage.
And we have Naveen from Databricks, and we have Marcus, also not from Databricks, from Workato.
Workato?
Yes.
Yeah. Marcus Cern, Chief Strategy Officer of Workato, integration automation company. I think you guys might all have in your grab bags the book, The New Automation Mindset. That's us. And obviously AI, huge part of that whole thing. I mean, the way we think about is AI and automation is probably the same reason why a company would embark on that. And so the two really very symbiotic. Yeah.
And Naveen, of course, needs no introduction. His company, Mosaic ML, was acquired by Databricks, which is one of the biggest AI deals of the year. But I'd give it over to you to say hello.
Yeah, so Naveen Rao, I was the CEO and co-founder of Mosaic. And yeah, it's been about 3.5 months now, like maybe not even 3.5 months that we got acquired. It was, yeah, pretty quick deal happened. I think one of the things that's kind of interesting is I think it's the quickest deal that I've seen. That's definitely over $1 billion. Literally from first conversation to close was 62 days. So that includes 30-day waiting periods, all that stuff. So been an interesting summer so far, but yeah, really ready to take on the enterprise and AI and generative AI.
Well, everyone here is obviously very well versed in the topic we're going to be talking about. But my first question to all of you is, before companies even start to think about deploying AI, what do they need to do architecturally to make sure that the data scientists, the developers, and eventually all other functions can actually use it the best they can?
I can get started, I guess. I mean, I think this is what Databricks has done for years, is really just organize data and make it put it into a form that's usable or consumable by different types of apps. Now, I would argue that training, generative AI apps, things like that, is a way to make that data interactive. And really, it comes down to cleaning it, getting rid of bad data, formatting it, all the boring stuff that nobody wants to do, but all of that's very important. So if you can't do that, you can't aggregate data, you're probably not ready to take on AI yet. You really need to get that stuff in order first.
Yeah. Maybe as a CEO of a company, the way we looked at it is we're about 1,500 people. And I find the interesting part about AI is that some of the things come top down, but a lot of it comes bottom up in terms of viral adoption. And so I basically try to come up with a very simple framework to say, what are the things that make us internally more efficient? And what are the things that's going to help our customers get more outcomes from our products, just as a framework. And then we basically formed a task team to look cross-functionally at all the internal use cases that were coming up. And then as a company that provides A/B testing solutions, we have a test and learn mindset where we said, look, we need to run a couple of experiments, see what works, what outcomes come out of it, and then double down on those cases. That's how we did it.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the journey of Workato ourselves, right? So again, as I said, we believe that there's a really big transformation on the way of AI. I think there's going to be winners, there's going to be losers. So we said, we want to help our customers do that, but first we're going to be number one. I mean, it has to happen at Workato. We started with OpenAI. Did a partnership. They were the ones who were ready. I think now there's more other choices also out there. But set that up, had a team, an engineering team around it, but then totally to your point, I mean, we believe this is going to be democratized. So the whole concept of like, hackathons and having all the different functions, being it go-to-market or being it in legal or being it in support, all thinking about how they could use that and then making it happen. Obviously, we believe at Workato it's really key to infuse it into the business processes itself. That needs to happen also.
Yeah.
Actually, one more thing I can add, observationally, that I've seen from customers is, right now we're in this huge hype bubble where everybody thinks that all intelligence is solved, where it's us in the field are like, it's not even close. So I think there's a pretty big gap. And I've seen these gaps happen in the past. I mean, I think even when I was a kid, the personal computer came out and everyone's like, oh, it can do your homework for you. And it's like, no, you can't do that. So I think we're actually in another one of those things when the hype happens, this gap increases. And so actually cutting through that, understanding what solutions are out there. Like you said, OpenAI was there first. Now there are lots of other things. Everybody's got different types of solutions, different ways of thinking about it. But really understanding what you're trying to drive toward and having a really hard goal of what you're trying to accomplish and seeing if that's even realistic. Because I've seen companies come and basically want like an analyst in a box. And it's like, we're not quite ready for that, guys. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. And I think getting your expectations to be realistic will lead to much more successful deployments.
And Naveen, I'm happy that you mentioned the word hype, because we noticed before we have 2 Germans on stage. So we wanted to bring out some realism as well in this conversation today.
It's going to be very pessimistic.
Yes, for the next one.
I'll be the American who hypes it back up.
Yes.
I'll bring it back.
But in all seriousness, one of the things you obviously see in enterprise adoption immediately become topics like compliance, for instance. Yeah. And when you think about big enterprises, for instance, in marketing adopting AI, it becomes about things like how compliant is my brand being used in the marketing content that I'm generating. So while the capability is there, you do need the workflows around it to actually ensure that you actually are compliant relative to your brand standards. So these nuances are the ones that really enterprises are thinking about as they adopt the technology. And that will I think, reset sometimes what's the ambition versus how fast can you go to get there.
We'll dive deeper into the risks and all the safety things that we need to also consider when putting together something like this. But before we dive into that, why don't you share examples of pilots that maybe you're running internally or your clients are running externally that demonstrate just how game-changing the technology could be, and any stats or metrics that you've seen that would be beneficial for the audience. Please share those too.
Okay, I can start with this. And by the way, this is going to be very un-German on my side. There's probably a reason they kicked me out, but I'm actually, I think it's incredible what we're going to see. So let's share like some very, very early examples of what we saw. Like go-to-market, we see a lot in go-to-market, sales, marketing, SDRs. So SDRs, one thing we did is a campaign, a reactivation. Sometimes an initial sales cycle isn't successful, but we always believe there's a second chance. And so we have a reactivation campaign that, based on the information we collected in the sales cycle and the early sales cycle, it actually crafts a communication to that customer to re-engage again. I mean, it beats, I think the number was 13 times better than what SDRs did before. It's incredible. We have like small little things in legal, like NDAs. It's also in the sales cycle. You got to go through an NDA before you can do a proof of concept and so on. So we have an AI-based system that detects if the NDA is kind of just normal or kind of looks like very weird. And in most cases, it's actually very normal. And it cuts down the time from like a week down to like minutes to get this approved, those kind of things. We use it in support. So our entire, think of it like knowledge management. Knowledge management, I think, is huge. I mean, both of us worked in management consulting back in our days, and we had at Booz Allen, we had this system, Knowledge Online, which I think was a game changer, but that was 20 years back. Now the knowledge management with an LLM is just incredible. So we took all our support content. There's a vector database. It's accessible through that LLM. The kind of reliability of the responses and answers you get are fantastic. And it goes on and on and on. The last panel was around security. So we have, Workado is an automation platform. It can be applied to all kinds of domains. So it's SOAR, security orchestration and remediation. We kind of built an accelerator for that, infused some AI. I was at Splunk before Workado. I did not believe what I saw there. It's quite something. It picks intelligently the right tasks of what to do next and so on. It's mind-blowing.
Alex and Naveen, do you have some examples to share as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, I think there's sometimes this expectation that AI is necessarily better than other models, and it's not necessarily true. And a lot of our customers try to figure that out. So they literally use us to test the different models that they're running. A very simple example is a very large media company here in New York City, a publisher of content. They, for instance, wanted to think about how do they best suggest to their users the next piece of content. And you can drive this through an AI model, but you could also just show people the 10 most read articles on the website of that day. Yeah? And they wanted to see what actually drives better engagement for their audience. Because ultimately, it's what an earlier speaker, Shane from Jasper, said. It's about the business outcome. They just want to know what's driving conversions or what drives more engagement. Maybe AI is a good tool to do this, maybe not. Yeah? And so they ran this model, and they basically bought one out-of-the-box AI tool. They developed their own recommendation engine, and they ran top 10 most read articles. And then they used our capabilities to actually test each 3 of them to see which conversion would be the highest. Guess what? The 10 most read articles did better than any AI model. Because you and I, we click on the 10 most read articles because we're like, oh, they are really cool. I want to see what other people are reading. So it's interesting. You need to test the models to actually figure out what actually works. And so those are some of the examples we see. Our customers will I'll share some other examples on some of the other questions we talk about.
Yeah, I think along the same vein of driving business outcomes, I think everyone's gotten excited when ChatGPT came out. It was just mind-blowing to people. I don't think people understood that you could actually, form English that looks like a human formed it, and so that just got everyone excited. But I think in terms of actual apps, like the killer apps, there aren't a lot of them yet. There will be. I think 2 areas I've seen amongst enterprises, and what we do at Mosaic and Databricks is literally sell these tools to enterprises to build solutions, whatever those things are. And so we care about their business outcome, because if they don't have a good business outcome, they don't buy more. They're not going to spend more. So we really want to give them good advice here. And so coding seems to be a big one that I think is an important killer app. And there's going to be lots of different kinds: querying databases, customizing tools to use certain libraries and things like that. We see this all over the place. Like, different companies have libraries that their developers have to use. General models just don't know about those libraries, so you have to customize. So one of our customers, Replit, they're a online IDE company, and basically they had a ton of data from their customers, and they could actually build their own model. They trained one from scratch with us, and it actually outperformed even the biggest models out there like GPT-4 because they had really good data and they knew specifically what it needed to do. And they did it with a very small model. That made it very snappy. Like, they could make it so that when you're typing, you see things come up in real time. So less than 300 millisecond kind of turnaround time. So that was a very important, good business outcome for them because it engages their users. Their users like the platform. They stay on it. Another one we see is this sort of idea of assistance or doing partial work for a human and then letting the human fill it in or correct it. This is a customer I can't name, unfortunately, but it's in the medical space. They had a bunch of radiological data, so x-rays, like chest x-rays, even some MRIs, like brain MRIs, things like this. And they had retrospective data of what the radiological reading room wrote up. So you have the input and you have the output, basically. And you could write a model that says, well, take these inputs and give me those outputs. And it was a relatively small model. They had a pretty good data set, and they found that they could get 80, 90% of the report done automatically. The radiologist then has to read it over, make sure it's correct, there's nothing spurious in it, that sort of thing. But they actually did a study, an N of like maybe 100, something like that, and they found about a 25% throughput increase for the radiologist. Again, that's a real outcome. That's real dollars, it's real latency in terms of delivering reports, this kind of thing. So these are the kind of cases we're looking for. I mean, this cuts through the hype a little bit because it's like, does it work? To your point, you have to test this stuff. You have to make sure that the generative AI model is actually doing something useful.
Is there an internal pilot that you could talk about, Naveen?
An internal pilot to us in our company? Yeah, actually we have a lot of things like this. So in Databricks, we have access to lots of different types of databases. So if anyone knows the Databricks tools, like we have a governance platform, we have a SQL engine. And at the end of the day, like I said, generative AI is about making data interactive. And this is actually what drove the acquisition of Mosaic to some degree, was all of these governance platforms and data organization tools exist, and how do we bolt on this new capability? There's already a tool inside they call it Lakehouse IQ, which is basically, think about it, querying data with English. And I think that's going to be a bit of a game changer now, right? We can now say, dump all this data in, you have data engineers who are doing that, and now you can have analysts on the front end who don't know anything about SQL queries or databases or schema. They can just type in English and they get responses back that are relevant within their context of their company. So stuff like this, I think, is going to be huge. It's not quite there. We're still working on it, but I'm excited about the future.
Well, I think it's actually really interesting. So we're in this automation business, right? Doing more with less, right? And then when it really hit me, when was my 15-year-old son, he had to write his homework biology essay. And so he just put the topic in, and like seconds later, this thing came out, and we both looked at each other, and we're like, you cannot submit this, right? So, because nobody will believe you wrote this.
Yeah.
And so we went in, next one, and then write it in the, from a perspective of a 10th grader. And actually, it actually did it. It kind of dumped it down a little bit. It was just fascinating. So you can totally do
the other killer app, by the way.
More with less. Now,
high school students.
The interesting thing is, and we had a workshop yesterday about this, is that I don't think we comprehend yet what we can do with this thing, because I think a lot of us have been trained in a certain way of how we interact with technology. We kind of believe, we basically order stuff online, and it's very precise of what you do, and we think of very precise like business process steps and so on. And I don't think this is how the world will work.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, you have to almost think about, you have like an intern that sits there, and you don't have to do all it's not micromanaging anymore.
And interns sometimes make mistakes, and that's my pivot into the next question, which Alex touched upon when he brought up certain risks and concerns, right? Data privacy is a concern. A lot of people, when you use sort of open source models especially, have that concern. What if my data leaks? Hallucinations are a concern. Maybe coming up with a solution for a disease that's not accurate and actually harmful. Which of these risks do you think are the most important ones for enterprises to consider, and what guardrails should they be thinking about?
So I can give you the example, a couple of examples from the work we do with enterprise customers, and these are very large customers that start to think about, first of all, what principles do we set around? And this is around marketing use cases and Gen AI content generation. And there's a couple of principles that come up in most companies. Number one, a human needs to be involved. So somewhere in the process flow, there needs to be a human interactions with the content. The second part is, to your point of your 15-year-old, a certain percentage of the content actually needs to be adjusted by the human so that you actually can, and the third one is you want to be able to source and be able to be compliant and have a history about where the content actually came from. And I can give you the example of, and since May is not here, the joint customer that we're working on is Salesforce. So Salesforce is using our platform to manage the entire workflow around content, 300 content marketers using the platform, the entire marketing organization, and it brings together, content brings everybody in a marketing organization actually together as content touches everything from ads to brand to sales decks to every piece. And then the other part is we optimize their content. But the interesting part about the example with Salesforce is think about AI being the brain. In this case, Rider is the brain that generates content. But you need a skeleton for the brain to live in. You need a body for this content to live in. And that's us in terms of actually the workflow. And so sometimes the brain can be too big for the body. If your brain is too big and generates all this different content, and to your point has maybe certain challenges that you might not even be aware of, certain risk challenges, you're setting yourself up to a lot of risk as a large company. And that's why it's important for companies to first think about the process, how is content actually going to flow inside the organization to actually be able to adapt the content. And that's what we see in companies like Salesforce, where they think very much about like, yes, we want all the power that Gen AI gives us, and the use cases are phenomenal. I mean, if you think about Salesforce launching a new product, how amazing is it that the AI can generate the entire campaign before you even know what the product is really about, and then help you actually accentuate different aspects of the product, et cetera. It's fantastic. And all of this can be done so much faster, et cetera. But you need the guardrails around it so that it actually flows well through the organization. And so that's how we think about it in terms of the brain and the body really coming together.
Naveen, I know you have thoughts about safety, so.
I do, yeah. I think it's a topic that's come up a lot recently. Actually, this is kind of funny. Going with the high schooler example, I have 2 sons in high school, and actually I think that's one of the killer apps is having them cheat on essays. My son was supposed to turn in some Spanish homework, and I get an email from his Spanish teacher. Literally, the first line in Spanish says, "I am an AI assistant," which he did not in Spanish, which he didn't even proofread. So I think evaluation of outputs is very important. And I was like, if you're gonna cheat, at least do it right. Come on, kid, right? Very disappointed in this. Anyway. So I think that's evaluation of outputs is important. It's an important topic to make sure that like a human is checking it, or you have some kind of automated criteria that says something is safe for your application. There has been this, I think, this false dichotomy that's been put out there, and I'll say by certain folks who benefit from open models being shut down. I actually have strong opinions on this one. I think open models have been why this field has progressed so fast. Open dissemination of knowledge, researchers talking to each other, writing papers, sharing code. When you shut that down, the progress stops. And also, it solidifies positions of people who have a lead. Because when people have a lead and they know that lead is tenuous, they want to stop everyone else. And that's what's happening right now. And that's why I feel very strongly about open source models. And I actually think open source models are much safer. You can introspect them. You can modify them. Yes, the model itself, it can be disseminated. And everyone says, like, oh, then all the bad guys will get access. Guess what? Every one of them can sign up for an API. So, and those APIs are not, I mean, you can't say what safety is until you know what the application is. So you can come up with some guardrails that are useful, but I would argue those guardrails are very relevant to the task at hand. And sometimes, maybe you need to say racist stuff because you need to like pull apart different information that, in a medical context, maybe race does matter. So the model actually is rendered useless in those cases because of this safety. So there are many examples of that kind of thing. But I think in the end, our progress is dependent upon open models. It's dependent upon introspection. And enterprises using open source models actually gives them another layer of safety and control that they don't have with closed source models. So even if closed source models are at a higher level of performance, the control level is much higher with these open source models.
Marcus, I know you're...
There's an interesting study out there, actually, where they looked at AI systems, LLMs, giving medical advice, and doctors giving medical advice. Turns out the advice from the LLMs was actually better than the doctors. And that's kind of scary, or maybe good for the future, who knows? I mean, you look in all our applications, we very much believe in human in the loop.
Yeah.
Because I'm coming back to thinking of you have an intern there. It's like you also wouldn't put the research from the intern straight on your website, right? I mean, someone looks over it, you got to manage it, you got to, just like you manage a person. This is now, you got a brain there, you got a digital brain there. Before it was a deterministic switch, there's nothing you had to manage. But now you got a digital brain there, you gotta manage it. But I think the future is bright. I mean, if that study with the doctors says anything, maybe it could actually be better.
Well, since this panel is about driving value, let's talk about how you guys are thinking about measuring success, or how enterprises should think about measuring success. What benchmarks should they be looking at? Is it efficiency? Is it cost savings? Because inference can be very expensive. What are the sort of metrics you should be tracking?
So I mean, efficiency clearly is one of those things, doing more with less. But I think the one not to forget, because most of the use cases that we see are actually at the customer interaction layer. So I think the customer experience is a really good one to think about. There is, coming back to that, how do we interact with technology, and that paradigm is changing. I think there's experiences there that we might not even see. I talked to a distributor this week, electrical equipment for contractors, and when you order this stuff, it's actually complicated. When you put in something in your house, you got to have all the right pieces, and then one little piece, like really inexpensive, is missing. You can't do the entire job. And so there were things like, I don't know if you've seen in OpenAI, you can do vision now with the photos. Try that out.
DALL-E, yeah.
DALL-E generated the pictures.
Yes.
Now you basically, it detects what's in the pictures. It detected on the plane. I took pictures. It knew I was in United on this plane. It actually saw the map and said, like, you're most likely going to fly to New York. I was like, holy crap. So what can you do with that? For the distributors, actually, it's saying, like, I want this part. I want to order this part. Takes a photo, and it'll actually come up and say, like, that's the part. And by the way, if you ordered this part, you probably also want to order these 5 other parts.
Amazon knows that already, no?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that needs generative AI, right? It gets to your point, like test it and see what works.
But I think to your question about the metrics, clearly financial metrics that you will ultimately see, because AI comes at a cost also, and ultimately the question is, can you charge more for your products? Yeah. And at an economy level, will GDP go up, and we will see productivity gains because of AI, because it does come at a cost. And then the second part, obviously, is it's function specific. Marketing, there's a ton of expense in marketing that's spent with agencies to do things like image resizing, like things that there's so many cost buckets that will just be wiped out or completely changed. But obviously, you will reinvest it in other pieces where you can actually create better content, more quality, and that should be measured by conversion and ultimately by the ability to drive more top-line growth.
So Naveen, I actually want to challenge.
I would like Naveen to jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get back to it. I think what I've seen from talking with large enterprise, I talked to one of the largest insurance providers in the country just recently, and the CEO basically said, like, I think generative AI is going to be, for the next 2 to 3 years, an internally facing thing. It's the operational efficiency, because to them it's a very clear ROI. They don't necessarily want to change or disrupt their product experience yet, but I think he was thinking long term it will be transformational on their product. And I think this is actually the mindset of a lot of folks in large enterprise. All the cool stuff is happening in the smaller companies. All the innovative product stuff seems to be happening in startups. What's going to happen then is, like, big bank is going to see fintech company do something really cool, gain traction, buy that company, and everyone else is going to copy them. And so that's how this innovation is going to happen.
So we're going to wrap up, but I'm going to give you 10 seconds each to answer your biggest prediction for 2024. You talked about consolidation.
I'm done. I did mine.
So consolidation, 1.
Yeah.
2.
We will find out if humanity is good or bad, depending on how much AI will be used for fake purposes. I'm very curious.
Marcus?
Okay.
I think there's going to be 2024 the first, like, real aha moment that a big company has, where they go like, oh, we should have invested in that earlier.
Well, on that note, thank you all so much for joining me. Hope this was a fun discussion for you all. And hope the next few panels will be short too.
Good.
Once again, please thank our panelists Marcus, Naveen, May, and Tanya for another AI-mazing discussion.